Hello and welcome to the Galway Pridecast, the astonishingly primitive first episode. I'm your host, Mark Laherty. Here with me is Robyn Smith.
Hi, I'm Robyn. My pronouns are they, them, and she, her. I'm pretty happy to be here.
My name is Mark. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm an ordinary committee member and I run the various social media things. So, Robyn, how are you today?
Pretty tired. I'm not sure if you can see, but I have a pretty big can of Red Bull right here beside me on the floor.
It's too hot. It's too hot is the problem.
Too hot. Hot damn.
Very sorry.
I'm sorry.
I got a Nintendo Switch today, and that was good. And I also got a TV. So basically, I spent a lot of money in one go, and that's kind of stressful. I needed those things. Well, need is debatable. Also, I don't have a screwdriver to screw the screws into the bottom of the TV stand, so it's all just very wobbly.
I'm very good at DIY, basically making my own tools and that. Well, using other stuff as tools.
Using other stuff. You've got a tool right here.
I am a tool.
Yay. Come to my house and fix my TV for me.
This podcast is sponsored by the RTE TV license.
So, one of the things that I wanted us to talk about was our first Pride and the first time that we went to a Pride festival and what that was like. So, Robyn, what was your first Pride?
Technically, my first Pride was Trans Pride in Brighton, actually. It was July 2017, about 7 months or so after I came out to my parents as bisexual. And yeah, it was really nice. I was pretty anxious the whole time because it was a nice atmosphere, but it was new, kind of like a new place, new people. So that was kind of tough in that regard, but it was very welcoming. There was actually the thing I remember most actually is there was kind of a film night kind of thing. With films made by other transgender directors or writers, and some of them were funny, some of them were more, what's the word I'm looking for? Sad. I can't think of a better word for it. All in all, they were just really good, and yeah, I look forward to going back sometime again, hopefully next year actually.
That's really cool. I've heard really good things about Pride and Trans Pride all around from everyone who's been there that I know. I haven't consulted every single person. You understand. My first Pride was Galway Pride a couple of years back, and the very next year I ended up on the committee, so I suppose you could say it made an impact on me. But I suppose where a lot of people have their story about the first Pride being really important to them, by that time I had kind of already found my tribe, so to speak, because I had already been in Galway in college for a few years. Gigsock was part of that, Gigsock and NUI Galway. Also a big part of that was Bi Ireland and the meetups that they had every couple of months. That's been organised by various people, but especially by Sharon Nolan, who unfortunately can't be with us today, but Sharon is our chairperson this year, and that's super cool because she's a very cool person.
I'm sorry, I'm still just stuck on when you said tribes, because I'm just thinking of when I was on Grindr, it says, "What's your tribe?" and it's stuff like otter, bear, and I was like, oh, ooh.
No,
I don't know if this is where you're going with it.
No, I'm not talking about my Grindr persona. That's what it is.
I don't really know if you'd have technically a persona. You're probably a twink.
I mean, let's leave that there.
Sorry.
You're fine. Robyn, as you know, I am extremely online. And one thing that I have come across, indeed that I can barely get away from this week, is the discourse around civility and how we should engage with our political opponents, so to speak, and whether we should engage with them in a civil way or whether we should sort of crack out the big guns. And I want to talk about that a little bit. I know that you're not as online as I am because you value your mental health like a smart person.
See, say that, but I'm literally drinking like a huge ass can of Red Bull right now. But go on.
Nobody's perfect. What started this discourse, so to speak, was that VidCon happened recently, which is just a convention for YouTube and YouTubers, etc. And there, one popular YouTuber who goes by the screen name Boogie said on a podcast that was being recorded there that he thinks that the LGBT plus community pushed to get equal marriage passed in the United States too fast, as that resulted in the death of a lot of people who didn't need to get killed at this point. And
I'm sorry, one question.
yeah,
What the fuck?
agree. And this is why this rubs a lot of people up the wrong way, myself included, I will say. And it just sort of kickstarted this wider conversation on the internet about civil discourse, quotation marks, and where that's appropriate and where it isn't. I'm going to talk about this in terms of the Irish referendum that happened 3 years ago now, was it?
The marriage equality one, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. May 2015.
May 2015, and that was 3 years ago. Lord, I have no concept of time. It just scares me. That was based on the work of a lot of hardworking people and a lot of very confident people, and it was like well strategized. And to be fair, the no campaign in that referendum wasn't super well organized in the way that you saw in the more recent referendum on the Eighth Amendment. That felt much more down to the line, even though it ended up winning by a wider margin, which felt weird to me.
I was about to say, it's like, didn't actually, like, I think marriage equality passed by about, like, 63% or something.
63, and then the Eighth Amendment was repealed by 66%.
Yeah.
66 point something.
And this is like, thanks, Ireland. Thank you.
Yes. It's a funny old world. They did that, and nothing they did was, like, I think, bad, but you would see takes on like the mainstream media and also on like social media and among the public in general that people were being too forceful. People were, like pushing it down people's throats. And I just get the impression always that like if people aren't literally silent, then they're going to be characterized by someone somewhere as being too forceful, as not being polite or civil.
Whenever I try to talk to my family about it, actually, they're kind of just like, didn't really want much of a discussion. It's just like,
yeah.
Actually, I think it was one of them. I can't remember who it was. Might be my dad. Said it was like, he was just like, oh, I think both sides are kind of like shoving down each other's throats or whatever. It's like, I've literally not seen anything from the S side. That me personally, I haven't seen anything where it was like shoving it down other people's throats. However, on the no side, I saw plenty of it.
Yeah, well, the no side was. You can make certain arguments about the Eighth Amendment, and I wouldn't agree with those arguments, but with the case of marriage equality, it's just straight up discrimination, and any arguments outside of that were always very loosey-goosey. So it's just peculiar to me that people would crack out the both sides argument on even that. I feel like saying that the both sides are the same is always just the laziest cop-out, because it comes from this idea that in order to be correct and fair, you have to treat both sides fairly, but that gets mangled in their heads into you have to treat both sides the same. And it's like, no, you have to look at what the different camps are doing and see what they're doing differently and come to the conclusion based on that, right?
See, because you brought it up, just the whole thing around surrounding that you should be civil to like your political opponents and whatnot. Mm-hmm. It's like in essence, what you're saying, what it feels like in a lot of cases when people say that is like, it's like, yeah, they don't think let's say you're queer and they're just like, yeah, I don't think you should be able to get married. Like, it's like you're basically just saying, like, I don't agree in that sense that I should have to be civil. I shouldn't have to defend my humanity to someone.
But Robyn, you're being so rude.
I will throw this mic at you.
Don't. It's very expensive.
But yeah, I get annoyed with stuff like that. It's like, like, why can't there be like a civil debate? And it's like, okay, well, like taxes. discussing like legislation or whatever on taxes, like that's something you can have a civil debate on, because
Yes.
nobody's humanity or rights are up for debate essentially. Like I think in some cases, yes, like I think people should be a bit more, maybe try to be as civil as possible. But in other cases, like, in a lot of cases, like, stuff like the marriage equality referendum,
Yes.
the to keep calling it the abortion referendum, but like, yeah,
That's basically accurate.
just stuff like that. It's just like it's very different. Like, I mean,
Of course, of course. I totally agree with you. So, another thing that I thought we should talk about, since Pride is political, I just sort of noticed this week that there's something like 17 million votes going on later this year, the presidential election, because Michael D has confirmed that he's going to run for a second term, even though he said in the first place that he wasn't going to. And people seem very receptive to that.
yeah, actually, I think like the only person I think I've met who doesn't seem to like him actually is my dad, and I don't know why. I actually don't. I don't think he's actually given me a reason why he doesn't like him. But like, I haven't seen anything really in the past to kind of give me a reason not to like Michael D. Higgins.
Yeah, he's an unproblematic fave across the country, as it were.
Miggledy.
Miggledy. Miggledy Higgledy. I know the person who came up with Miggledy Higgins. Like just that little nickname / turn of phrase. And I don't mean his mother.
Carry on.
Michael D. Higgins may well run unopposed, and if he does have any opposition, he will probably win anyway. I've met like one person who wasn't all the way gone on Michael D. Higgins. He's a poet called Kevin Higgins. I'm pretty sure it's no relation. He's a poet from around Galway. I took his poetry class. He wrote a poem about Michael D, which sort of gently took the piss out of him. But even then, I don't know whether or not Kevin actually dislikes Michael D. He just sort of writes gentle satire anyway. Also, like, I recall that during the 2011 elections, which were, like, surprisingly heated, maybe I was just following it closely because I'm a dork, but, like, there was a lot of toing and froing. Like, Martin McGuinness ran for that election. And
This is general elections you're talking about, of course, yes.
the presidential election, I mean.
Martin McGuinness ran?
Martin McGuinness ran for president. Did you not?
Did I just like blocked out of my memory?
I mean, if you did, well, I don't want to say anything too controversial, but I can understand why you would.
Christ.
And then there was Sean Gallagher, who almost got it, and then in the last fortnight in the run-up to the election, there was an RTE interview where he said the curses words, "I don't recall receiving an envelope," which is not the sort of categorical denial that one was wants to give in that situation. And Miggledy snagged it.
What's the context for that, though?
The context for that was that someone under a pseudonymous account, which I think was supposed to be one of the other candidates, I think Martin McGuinness, but actually wasn't, says that Sean Gallagher has taken money as a bribe, like has been handed a little brown envelope, was I think the specific thing. And RTE, failing to like vet whether or not this Twitter account was legitimate, because this was only 2011 and the mainstream media didn't really catch up on how social media works just yet. All the same, the interviewer at the moderator of the debate rather asks Sean Gallagher whether he has taken a bribe, and Sean Gallagher stammered a bit and said, "I don't recall receiving an envelope." And so we're pretty sure he actually didn't receive an envelope of any kind, but like he didn't deal with that well. And I think you'd want to. Like, if you're president, you don't want to be of a temperament where someone could make up anything, whatever, and you just sort of stammer a bit and look guilty. And your suit grows 3 sizes to make you look more guilty.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. I think it's only actually in the past like a year or so, personally, that I've actually started getting like interested in politics.
Yeah.
Like before then, it's like, kind of took on like, kind of a lot of people around me, it's kind of like demeanor towards politics. It's like, sure, they're all the same, like they're all corrupt. And it's like, I'm kind of realizing now, it's like, I mean, nothing's going to change unless I actually fucking try to do something about it. So, try and vote in people that I think are best for like office, that kind of thing. Actually, something I was really surprised to find out, not quite surprised, just kind of like back in my home constituency, there's actually like, there's no like decent left-ish candidate for my constituency, which it's not surprising, but it's also kind of surprising for me. Actually, I recently discovered someone I went to school with, his dad is like in Renua. I was like, oh no.
Oh, your friend's dad is in Renua.
Yeah.
Typical rural Ireland. Mayo. Sorry.
Go on, Mayo. Mayo for Sam.
Yeah, thanks for saying it. Now it's okay that I said it. Also, later this year, the plan is that there's going to be referenda on a constitution saying that a woman's place is in the home.
Oh, no.
Because the constitution says that now.
I mean, I figured, but I didn't...
Just taking it out now. It has, like, I understand 0 or close to 0 actual legal consequences. I guess it just kind of got embarrassing. So they decided to lop it out. Similarly, there's going to be a referendum on the laws around blasphemy.
That I was aware of.
Yes.
So I can kind of see that getting higher. I can see that kind of getting it passed basically for that to be removed.
Yeah.
Like more than it was for like the previous referenda.
Yeah. Well, I don't know like the legacy of trying to get that struck from the Constitution. My instinct would be that it will probably go because there is a lot of backlash against the church amongst all age groups at this point. Like, probably there will be different distributions, but I'd be pretty optimistic about that one. Especially since it doesn't have, like, huge practical consequences. So, you're not going to have, like, just off the top of my head, the United States funding coming in to fund a no campaign.
See, you say that, but, like, honestly, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I could be shoving my foot in my mouth here. Maybe I jinxed it. Robyn.
Yes.
Did you know that today's podcast is sponsored by Martin McGuinness's run for the presidency in 2011? Martin McGuinness's run for the presidency in 2011. Robyn repressed it.
Jesus Christ, like.
Robyn, what else is this podcast sponsored by?
The little hamster in the soundboard, which gets upset and anxious when we laugh or cough into the mic because he thinks we're laughing at him.
See, this is our second time trying to record this podcast. The first time there was some trouble with the microphones, and the first time I mentioned that basically that we were told by the people who were like showing us how to use the microphones and everything not to speak too loudly or laugh too loudly or cough into the microphones because there's a little gerbil who doesn't know whether we're laughing at him or with him. So just to laugh very quietly so the gerbil doesn't know. But the thing is, I didn't lead with that setup or anything in this episode. So presumably you just seems like you were doing a really weird bit.
Yeah.
Whoopsie dupsie. You don't seem too bothered.
I'm really not. I mean, it's not as bad as some of the shit I've come out with so far.
Nailed it. So, Robyn, what have we learned on the podcast today?
Well, I learned that Martin McGuinness actually ran for...
We already said that's something different. Another thing that we learned today is that a woman's place is in the home, according to the Irish Constitution. As you can't ever change that. That's how it works. Robyn's giving me a look.
I just feel like we've already say somewhere it's like that we are taking the piss.
just sounds the joke, Claxon. Joke. Like We have a thing where like a bassoon plays anytime that it's just a joke that shouldn't be taken literally.
Cue the laugh track.
It's just like, oh, a woman's place is in the home. The levels on that are so great.
Fucking hell.
So, Robyn, I think we can agree we nailed it. I think we can agree we nailed it. Yeah. Thanks so much for listening to this astonishingly primitive first episode. We'll be back as soon as we can with another. I've been Mark Laherty.
I've been Robyn Smith.
Thank you for listening. See you around.